This might be the first presidential election in my lifetime, at least, when foreign policy has not been an issue really at all. But it did appear last night in the Trump-Biden debate, at least briefly. Amazingly, North Korea policy seemed to be the most prominent foreign policy topic in the debate. Now, this is crazy because in the 20 years since I did my dissertation on U.S.-North Korea negotiations, I don't think I've ever seen it as a primary topic in a debate. But it got me excited, and so I thought I'd make this video for those of you who aren't quite as nerdy about U.S.-North Korea relations. First, let's listen to what she actually said.
President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war. And he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul. Millions of people would be dead right now.
President Trump, that's 30 seconds. Thank you. Vice President Biden, to you. North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy, who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you.
So let's talk about the backstory here. For those of you who didn't study North Korea, the Korean War, here is where Korea is. It sits between Japan, China, and Russia up in the center of Northeast Asia. It's been ruled since 1950, 1948 as a communist country by 3 generations of Kims. They're very hard to remember all those 3 Kim names, so we'll just call them Grandpa, Papa, and Junior. Now, the Korean War happened in 1950. North Korea invaded. They almost conquered all of South Korea. The United States, however, re-invaded from the south, and a naval invasion near Seoul forced North Korea back, the North Korean army back. But China intervened and drove the United States back to somewhere here, roughly in the middle. If you've ever been to the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C., that's pictured there in the upper left. It depicts a unit of U.S. Marines, I believe, that were stranded behind Chinese lines as the Chinese intervention came south very quickly and had to fight their way out. Now, fast forward, about 40 some years, the United States is still technically at war with North Korea, as we have been since 1950. And we discover that North Korea is attempting to build nuclear weapons. This is satellite photo of where they were trying to do it. Now, this obviously upset the United States. North Korea argued that, well, the United States has nuclear weapons in North Korea, so President Bush Sr. pulled them out. North Korea still was building nuclear weapons after President Clinton took office. Sometime, according to insider reports, at sometime early 1994, President Clinton called in all the senior military leaders to the White House and said, get ready for war. It's going to be real. It's going to be big. At this point, the peanut farmer steps in. He sends a message to the White House saying that Grandpa Kim here invited him on a little river cruise and he's going to go and see what happens. So he goes, right? President Clinton, Vice President Gore have no idea what's going to happen. And after their little dinner cruise, he announces that there's a deal, right? North Korea will stop its nuclear weapon production as long as the West, essentially South Korea, pays for proliferation-resistant reactors. Because really what they just wanted was nuclear power for their economy. So it looks like crisis averted. The problem is not that long thereafter, Grandpa Kim went on to become the eternal president of North Korea. His son, Papa Kim, took over in the midst of an economic crisis. He responded by prioritizing his military, and essentially all the deals got shut down. So for the next roughly 20 years or so, no matter what Clinton did, no matter what Bush did, no matter what Obama did, no matter how much pressure they put, no matter how much demands they said, no matter how much military exercises, sanctions, and whatnot, nothing worked. Eventually, Papa Kim went on to become the eternal chairman of the National Defense Commission, which doesn't seem quite as impressive as an eternal president. And his son took over just in time for the Winter Olympics. These were being held in South Korea, and so North Korea sent down their ambassador, who happened to be his sister, sitting next to Vice President Pence. Apparently the two didn't talk, and it may not have seemed like such a big deal, but instead of sending his sister, he could have sent the Oompa Loompas here. So Mike Pence came back to the White House and said, hey, Donnie, maybe they want to talk. Now, the national security bureaucracy, right, at the Pentagon, at the State Department, at the intelligence agencies, they said, no, we have to be hardline about this. We have to keep on sanctions. We have to make all these demands. But President Trump said, well, he didn't know about it. He didn't know very much about North Korea. He didn't know that we're supposed to be at war with North Korea, that by all rights we're supposed to be at war with North Korea. And he said, what the heck, let's talk. Right, so he called up North Korea and said, what needs to happen before we can talk? And North Korea said, well, you need to stop military exercises with South Korea. They're threatening us. The Pentagon said, no, we got to do it. The intelligence agency said, no, we got to do it. But Trump said, well, why not? Because, if we know one thing about Trump's foreign policies is that he doesn't like paying for U.S. forces abroad. And so it fit perfectly with what he wanted to do. So he canceled the exercises and started negotiations. Now, these negotiations had their ups and downs. You may recall one of perhaps Trump's greatest tweets of all time when he said that, well, yes, Kim Jong-un has a nuclear button, but mine is bigger. In any case, I don't think anyone had ever talked to Kim Jong-un or Jr. like that before, and perhaps he was shocked into being willing to talk to President Trump without any more preconditions. So they ended up meeting. This is here at the village at Panmunjom, where most North-South Korean negotiations take place. There on the right side is American soil, or South Korean international soil. On the left is North Korea. As a result of this meeting, a lot actually happened. We ended up here with both North and South Korea working together to remove landmines. They've been using as defenses in the demilitarized zone there for decades. We also have seen a dramatic change in North Korean propaganda. This has been typical propaganda posters under Papa and Grandpa Kim. Junior has replaced, of course, anti-America military force. Junior has replaced these with posters that totally de-emphasize the United States, that emphasize technological progress, social progress, economic progress, peaceful progress of all things, right? The flag there in the bottom, the Korean Peninsula in blue and on a white background is sort of the unification flag of North Korea. And of all things, it'd be hard to imagine a ski resort and a water park for North Korea's growing middle class. You can see there a picture of Junior himself there looking happy on the ski slopes. I don't know if he actually skis or not, but there are a few North Koreans that do. Now, on the other hand, what do we also see? As the moderator in the debate noted, in just a recent parade, North Korea showed off its sort of largest intercontinental ballistic missiles that can carry nuclear weapons that it has built to date, right? North Korea is big on military parades. So what do we make of this, right? This two-track existence where we have these negotiations going on, we have this beautiful relationship with beautiful letters and whatnot. Who knows what's being said, of course, and changes domestically in North Korea. But at the same time, North Korea, while they've stopped nuclear testing, they've stopped missile testing, they're certainly building more missiles. Whether they're building more nuclear weapons or not isn't quite clear, but they're showing no signs of demilitarization except along the border with South Korea. So where do we go from here, right? Biden makes pretty clear his plan. On the one hand, what does he do? He calls for maximum military and economic pressure for denuclearization. Okay? This is what Clinton tried until Jimmy Carter stepped in. It's what Bush tried. It's what Obama tried. And it has absolutely nothing to show for it. Bush came in, Bush W, and he had a new idea, which he didn't really want to deal with North Korea, but he wanted to deal with Iraq. And so he said, hey, let's get China to do it. And of course, Bush had good relations with China at the time. They were both concerned about Islamic terror. But after 16 years, Obama just picked up the Bush policy where Bush left off and did essentially the same thing. We have absolutely nothing to show for it. If you think about it from Junior's perspective, Libya, after it saw what happened in Iraq, said, hey, United States, we'll give you all of our secret weapons of mass destruction production materials. And that'll make us safe, right? We'll denuclearize, we'll de-weaponize. And not too many years later, the Obama-Biden administration invaded Libya. Gaddafi was killed. The country's in chaos. And what do we have now? You can see videos on the internet of black Africans being sold in slave markets in the streets of Libya. So I guess that did not work out quite as well. You can imagine the chaos if in the Korean Peninsula, if this were to happen, and all of a sudden 10 million North Koreans desperate for food suddenly walk down to South Korea. Trump, on the other hand, has a very different plan. He suggests, look, let's be friends, right? And yet, we're really happy North and South are making progress. Now, in 3 years, what do we see? Society becoming demilitarized. They don't teach that the United States is the enemy anymore. North-South relations, the U.S. has wanted the North and South to sign a peace treaty since 1953, and North Korea has always refused. 2 or 3 years ago, North Korea finally, for the first time, said, hey, maybe we can sign a peace treaty. Let's negotiate about it. And since the mass starvation in the 1990s, there have actually been private markets, but they've always been illegal and suppressed by the police. Junior has finally made them legal, opened up the economy to some degree. And the example here is Vietnam. The United States fought a long, costly war with Vietnam when we really hated Vietnam, right? But the two countries have really recently set aside their differences. Vietnam, while they're maintaining sort of communist political control, is actually opening up their economy, trading with the United States, and, to some degree becoming an ally against China of the United States. So, personally, I don't think there's any comparison between 22 decades of a totally failed policy that's resulted in no benefits for the United States, no benefits for South Korea or Japan, and a policy that, has shown immediate benefits for all of North Korea's neighbors, except maybe China, but that's not really a concern for us. Now, what do we make of this, really? I don't want to paint this picture of Trump as some sort of foreign policy genius, because I think to some degree his success has come about because he had no idea about North Korea, right? He hadn't been in government for 47 years and hadn't drunken the Kool-Aid from the security policy establishment about what had to be the case with North Korea, that we had to be at war with North Korea. And so he just said, heck, let's talk to him. There's a story. There's a story about Trump as he went into North Korea and looked around and said, wow, what a great place to build condominiums. And I don't think the story is true, but it sounds like Trump, doesn't it? And the story was spread around to make fun of Trump and his foreign policy ignorance. But he just happened to come along at a time when Junior was also thinking, instead of building bases, I want to build condos and water parks and ski resorts, right? And who in the world better to talk to him about building condos and water parks and ski resorts than Donald J. Trump? At this particular moment in history, Trump turned out to be the ideal president to make peace with North Korea. Interesting irony.